Bueno, hoy vamos a hablar sobre adjetivos. Hello class, today we're going to talk about adjectives. So what is an adjective? As you probably remember from elementary school, adjectives are words that modify a noun. So they further describe the noun. So in these examples, you can see some adjectives. A large hospital. Large is the adjective. An excellent surgeon. An effective treatment, a white uniform. All of those words in bold are the adjectives that describe the noun. Adjective placement. One major difference between Spanish and English is the placement of the adjective. So in English, as you can see in our example, a white uniform, the word white, the adjective, goes before the noun. In Spanish, almost always, there's always some exceptions, but almost always, the adjective will go after the noun. Un uniforme blanco. It may seem strange to you at first, but the more you place the adjective after the noun, the more comfortable you'll feel doing it. So, adjectives have to agree with the noun that they are describing. For any adjective that ends in the letter O or the letter A as its ending, it will have 4 different forms, depending on what they're modifying. So you have to think about whether or not the noun that they're describing is singular or plural, and whether or not it is masculine or feminine. So in the chart here, you can see the word blanco, the adjective, changes in 4 different forms depending on the noun that it is modifying. El uniforme blanco, it's blanco because uniforme is masculine and it's singular. And you can see the other forms in the chart as well. Blanca, blancos, blancas, modifying the nouns. So what happens with adjectives that don't end in an O or an A? There are many adjectives that do not end in the typical ending of O or A. One of these is the word grande, as you can see in the example. So for adjectives that don't end in O or A, they will only have 2 different forms, depending on if the noun they're modifying is singular or plural. So if it does not end in an O or A, you do not have to worry about whether or not the noun is masculine or feminine, because it will be the same in either form. So as you can see here, you just have grande or grandes, depending on if it is singular or plural. All right, one exception to this, adjectives that end in ista. So ista technically ends in an A, but the ending is ista. So if you see anything that ends in ista, it will only have 2 forms. So either singular or plural. So in the example here, we have el hombre realista, la mujer realista. As you can see, the adjective will always end in the ista or istas if it's plural. So this means the realistic man or the realistic woman, the realistic men or the realistic women. For a list of your most common adjectives, you can look at Página 84, page 84 in your textbook. You can look at this before we do some of the examples and we do some of the practices for homework and for assignments. So if you want to just look over those adjectives when you have a few minutes and start getting familiar with them. Some of those adjectives that are listed on this page, on that page, are the adjectives for colors in Spanish. So just to go over the pronunciation, amarillo, yellow, anaranjado, orange. That one's always the trickiest one, so make sure you practice it. Anaranjado, orange. Azul means blue. Blanco, white. Negro, black. Verde, green. Gris, gray. rojo, red, rosado, pink. So these are colors and they are also adjectives. For a list of vocab about clothing, you can see Página 85, page 85 in your textbook. So let's practice a little bit. How would you fill in the following adjectives in order to agree with the nouns? So las botas means the boots, plural. El sombrero, singular, for a hat. How would you match up these adjectives so that they modify the nouns correctly? The first example, since the adjective is verde, that does not end in an O or an A, so all you have to worry about is whether or not the subject is singular or plural. Since las botas is plural, we will make the adjective agree by making it verdes, adding the S to the end. For the adjective rojo, this does end in an O, so you need to think about whether or not the noun las botas is feminine or masculine. It is feminine. And if las botas is singular or plural, it's plural. So because it is plural feminine, you would change the word rojo to rojas. Las botas rojas, the red boots. Gris does not end in an O or an A, so we only need to worry about changing it into the plural, grises. So for this other example for sombrero, it's pretty simple. So because it is a singular masculine noun, verde would stay the same, verde. Rojo would stay the same, masculine singular, rojo. And gris would stay the same, masculine singular, gris. Okay, adjectives that go in front of the noun. So as you know, in any language, there are always exceptions to every rule. So we just talked about how the adjective should go after the noun. However, there are some adjectives that will always go before their noun. So one example of that is if you're talking about numbers, números. You would say, un hombre, dos mujeres, tres personas. One man, two women, three people. So if you're talking about a number, it should go before its noun. Mucho, tengo mucho dinero, I have a lot of money. Tengo mucha fiebre, I have a lot of a fever. That would go before the noun. Poco, tengo poco dinero, I have just a little bit of money. Tiene poca fe, he or she has just a little bit of faith. Mismo, es el mismo hombre, son las mismas mujeres. It's the same man, they're the same women. Todo, trabajo todo el día, I work all day. Trabajo todas las mañanas, I work every morning. Otro, otro día, otro problema. So another day, another problem. All of those would precede the noun or go in front of the noun. Remember, this is an exception to the rule. Most adjectives will go after the noun. All right, adjectives that could go in front or after the noun. So for bueno and malo, good or bad, it doesn't matter. It could go before or after. Un libro bueno is the same thing as un buen libro. Un mal libro is the same thing as un libro malo. The only difference here is, as you can see, if malo goes in front of the noun, we do remove the O, so we would say mal libro and not malo libro. And same thing with buen. If buen goes in front of the noun, if bueno goes in front of the noun, you would remove the O, making it buen, un buen libro. The meaning of this is exactly the same, whether it goes before or after the noun. Here's another adjective that could go before or after the noun. But in this case, depending on where the adjective is placed, it will change the meaning. Un gran hombre means a great man. Un hombre grande means a big man. Here are a few other ones like that. So I can let you read through this list, but for the most part, you just have to start getting used to seeing these in different positions in the sentence, and then look at the other sentences around it to try and get the meaning. El hombre pobre means someone who is literally poor. El pobre hombre is someone who you feel bad for. So that person could be a millionaire, and if you say, oh, pobre hombre, it's not that they're poor, it's that you feel bad for them. Like, oh, poor baby. Viejo. Un amigo viejo means someone who is elderly. Un viejo amigo is someone that's an old friend. So they wouldn't necessarily have to be old, but you've known them for a long time. Un carro nuevo means a brand new car. Un nuevo carro means it's new to you. So it's a different car. It could be brand new. It could be used, but it's brand new to you. Único. Un caso único, a unique case. El único caso means it's the only case. Medio, la temperatura media, the average temperature. Medio kilo, half a kilo. So depending on where these adjectives are placed in the sentence will change their meaning. All right, changing gears here. What is a suffix? A suffix is anything that you add to the end of the root of the word that adds a little bit of meaning to the original root. So if we have tall in English and we make it tallish, the suffix is ish. If we change wax to waxy, the suffix is the y. It just changes the meaning just a little bit. In Spanish, one of the suffixes that you'll have to learn is ito or ita. Depending on if it's masculine, it would be ito. If it's feminine, ita. So if you already know the noun carro, which means car, and then you see the word carrito, you need to know that carrito means a little car. So ito or ita means it's either smaller or it's a term of endearment. So in the second example, Marta, Martita, Martita could be a little girl named Marta, or it could be an elderly woman that you just want to use in a very familiar way. Martita is like, oh, sweet dear Martita, oh, my dear friend Martita. So it's a term of endearment if you add that ito or ita, or it could just mean that it's smaller. Bajo, bajito. As you can see, bajo is an adjective. Carro and Marta are nouns. So for the suffixes ito and ita, you could use those on nouns or adjectives. Another suffix to learn is isimo or isima, depending on if it's masculine or feminine. This is for adjectives only. So the adjective fuerte means strong. If you say fuertísimo, it means really, really strong. So you cannot go stronger than fuertísimo. El sol está fuertísimo. It's the strongest. It's very, very strong. All right, when to use ser versus a star with adjectives. Again, ser and a star both mean to be, but they are never interchangeable. Some adjectives could be used with either ser or a star, but that would change the meaning at least a little bit when you change the verb to ser or a star. So let's look at some examples here. You would use ser if you want to differentiate the subject from other members of the same category. So this is kind of big picture thinking. So if you think of everything as a category, then you would kind of start to think whether you should use ser or star. So compared to other males, Miguel is tall. So as a male, is he tall or is he short? Miguel es alto. What about weather? El clima. El clima en Quito es frío. Compared to other climates, Quito is cold. Beth es muy pálida. So compared to other women, Beth is pale. She's a pale woman. Now let's look at what happens when you change the verb to estar. Here you're talking about the current state or condition of someone. So if you say Miguel está alto, maybe he used to be short, but now he's tall, so he's growing. Someone comments, Miguel está alto. He looks really tall, he's getting taller. El clima en Quito está frío. So compared to the normal weather in Quito, Quito's feeling really cold right now. Beth está muy pálida. Compared to how she normally looks, Beth is looking pale right now. Maybe she's sick or something, and right now she looks pretty pale. So you would think of the current state or condition that she's in compared to her normal state. So that's when you would use estar. So here are a few that completely change their meaning depending on if they're paired with the verb ser or estar. So I'll let you read through this chart. Just take a minute. One that you are going to see a lot is going to be estar seguro. So if you are speaking with someone, that term will come up a lot. Are you sure? So you would say, ¿estás seguro? Or ¿estás seguro? To be sure. As you can see, if you were to say a verb using ser, it means something completely different. Are you safe? So you just want to take note of this and make sure you understand that changing the verb ser or estar usually has a meaning change as well. That is all I have for you today. Muchas gracias, and we will practice using all of these adjectives and using ser and estar until it becomes second nature. Thank you.